we're not going to say much. It's been a long day. I've asked Christine just to say a few words. It's always good to have somebody from France speak about the summary of a conference, because I think she'll say something different. I'll only note that I do think the theme, and Henry said it again, is that nationalism, as we've discussed, is a very complex phenomena that is both, there's old nationalism, new nationalism in various forms, but it's really different. And also I think it was interesting because we see that the way that people have approached the topic of the conference is very different, and it relates a lot to their own understanding and needs of kind of a tension between globalization and internationalization. I'll put those together, although there's troubles with that. In nationalism, I think, Satoshi talking about Japan was partly, about the difficulties of old nationalism in Japan and how it can be, more internationally engaged is really restricted by a very traditional society that is changing but slow to change. On the US side, it's like we're all about ourselves and we're sitting on our laurels and we don't seem to be too engaged about these things. We obviously, our universities do things internationally, but there's not a lot of coherency really among the American universities in their approach to it, and there's really not a lot of coherency at the national level versus a China where it's extremely ambitious on China terms and it relates to a larger foreign policy approach and a centralized government, obviously, that's very different. In Turkey, nationalism is at the moment really about suppression and controlling the political elite or the political power structure that is now in place. In Brexit, I don't know. Who knows what it means? It's like a mystery as to what's really going to happen, which again, I get back to my theme that I always like to talk about the British, is that they like to leap before they look on a lot of these reforms. Europe also is a wait and see. But those are just a few little comments. I asked Christine to come up to come up and say a few things, and then we'll conclude. And that will be brief too.
So do I need it's okay if I speak here? Okay. So, thank you very much, John, for giving me this last task. I will be very short. But first of all, I would like to thank you for the really insightful and very accurate topic for this conference. Even if I'm quite worried about the next anniversary, 10th anniversary of this center. I remember that 10 years ago, the topic was crisis and competition. This time it was nationalisms and universities. Let me hope that in 2027, the topic will be 2027, a university golden age. Maybe it's something more optimistic, but let's see. You asked me about what I learned in these 3 days. It's of course impossible to sum up what has been said. So I would like to raise only 3 points. First of all, I think that we all notice that nationalism is really a general trend and that no regional area seems to escape to this general movement, meaning that very different countries all over the world are confronted with this trend. And of course, all universities, world-class universities, as well as less international institutions are also confronted with it, as well as all disciplines. And we mentioned that in many talks that maybe some disciplines are more concerned than others, but it seems that none of them really escape this general movement. This being said, I would like to draw on what Sheldon several times mentioned, but also on the definition, the very inspiring definition Henry Brady provided of nationalism, and which has to do with also with our own identity. And probably we all need some kind of national identity, and nationalism per se is maybe not so bad or problematic. What is problematic, it seems to me, and that's what I learned from these 2 days, is when nationalism is associated with populism, and we have many examples of that, for instance, in this country, but also in mine, or when nationalism is associated with authoritarian regimes. So it's much more this association which is problematic and which raise problems in our countries. The second thing I wanted to say is that it is clear that universities have a responsibility in the nowadays process. And I think that's something I often heard in the different contributions. So the engagement of universities in international competition in a way cut them from their societal responsibilities because they are much more focused on rankings, production of citation index, production indicators, and so on, than on other topics. And I think that we really have, as universities, a responsibility in what is going on. And the third lesson I would like to mention, and from what I heard, is also that it is the responsibility of universities to reverse the national trend. By resisting, first of all, and by developing solidarity towards academics in danger. And I think that's a very strong role that we have to really endorse. Second, by putting more emphasis in training citizens and not only professionals, or not only looking at research results or research indicators. And I really think that this mission that we have to train national citizens, but national citizens which are at the same time open to international and to the world. And third, it is our mission as universities also to pay more attention to society and not to forget, and I will recall what Willem said this morning, that academia needs society as much, at least as much as society needs academia. So thank you again for this wonderful conference on a difficult topic, but really with very interesting discussion and contributions. Thank you.
So we did record this. I hope we'll have it up maybe in a couple of weeks. We'll send out notices for you. And just to say again, thank you so much for coming, especially those who traveled very far to get here. We thank you very much. Safe travels home. And I was looking for a gavel, but I couldn't find a gavel. So we're done.